What up, my piano friends? I'm Zach Evans, and today I want to talk about how to solve left-hand, right-hand coordination issues on piano and just get this area of your technique taken care of. Now, this is one of the biggest struggles beginners have on piano. And I want to say that because a lot of people think that it's just a problem they're having, and maybe their brain doesn't work that way, and I just don't have good coordination skills. This is 100% not true. Nobody starts off with good coordination skills. It's always hard at the beginning for everybody. But don't worry, we're going to take you through a systematic process, a three-step, which now has evolved to a four-step process for getting hands together coordination for any song. So first we're going to start out with these exercises. And if you scroll down on the page, you'll see 4 different exercises. They have both a video and sheet music. So if you can read sheet music, you can just read the sheet music off the page. If not, no big deal. Just click the play button and you can literally see a top-down view of me actually playing these exercises. Now, these are meant for beginners. So if these look way too easy for you and you think you're more advanced in this, simply scroll below the exercises and I'm going to show you how to put hands together coordination into an actual song that's a little more challenging, a little more difficult. All right, so let's get started. So first, I'm going to show you guys exercise 2.1. It's a second example down. The reason I want to demo on this exercise is because it has a melody line, which is a little different than exercise 1.1 or 1.2, which doesn't have any melody. So I'm going to demo on exercise 2.1. All right, so when we sit down and play hands together, step 1, and this seems very obvious maybe, but it's something a lot of people don't do. And it's you want to have hands separate, rock solid. Now, there's a difference between hands separate learned and hands separate rock solid. And the biggest mistake by far that people make, and before we get onto the cool advanced strategies, the biggest mistake is people simply don't have hands separate rock solid. Now, when I say rock solid, I mean with a metronome rock solid. Because what happens oftentimes is, let's say we're trying to play this rock solid at 46 beats per minute. And I'm just going to play the right hand, just the right hand. So it goes like this. Now, the problem people have is oftentimes they can play it, but it's not rock solid and it'll sound more like this. It'll sound more like this. See how that's sloppy? Now, the problem is, a lot of people, they get hands separate and they think, I learned it, it's good, but it's sloppy, so all the notes are a little bit off. And the problem is when you try to line up the left hand and line up the right hand, even if everything's just a little off, it makes the whole thing kind of saggy and kind of sway, and your brain won't be able to click onto exactly where the notes match up. So first things first, get both hands rock solid, hands separate. By the way, if you don't have one of these, it's a metronome. You can get one on Amazon for like $20. Or there's also an iPhone app for it, though I would highly suggest getting an actual metronome so you aren't distracted by your phone when you practice. All right, moving on. Step 1, get hands rock solid, hands separate. All right, now on to step 2. Now step 2, before we try to right away actually play hands together, because a lot of times for beginners, that's going to be really challenging. So what we want to do now is isolate the rhythm. We want to forget about the melody, forget about the notes, and just, can we do the rhythm? And how we do that is we just tap the rhythm. So instead of playing the notes, we do hands together and we tap the rhythm. Now, normally I'd tap on my legs, but I don't think you can see it with the camera angle, so I'll just tap right here. So for example, 2.1, it would go like this. Now, of course, if you can't even tap the rhythm, there's no way you're going to be able to play the rhythm, because now you have to worry about the melody and the rhythm at the same time. So make sure you can tap the rhythm before you start playing the rhythm. By the way, when you tap the rhythm, start off at a nice, slow, easy pace. Don't worry about getting it super fast. All right, so now we got the first 2 steps, right? First, get hands separate, rock solid. Second, tap the rhythm out with both hands. All right, step 3. Once you have those 2 steps accomplished, we're going to work on step 3, which is what's called the added note strategy. Now, here's another thing people run into. So a lot of times they might get past the first 2 steps and they try to put the whole song or the whole example together. Maybe this 2 measure long example is a lot of times too much to do right away. So we use what's called the added note strategy. So what we do is start with just the first 2 notes, right? So it's just this. And you practice that 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now that is pretty drilled in. I mean, it's pretty easy. But now the next step is we simply add 1 more note. So we add this next note of the example. So it just sounds like this. Right? You practice that 4 times, then you add the next note. So it sounds like this. Boom, practice that 4 times, and so on until you've played the entire example. Now, the huge benefit to this is you're not trying to learn the whole thing at once, which can be very overwhelming and hard to wrap your mind around if you're a beginner. But if you're only adding 1 more note every time, it's very simple. And then you get a lot of practice with the beginning part of the section, and you're simply adding 1 more note. All right, so that's the next step. Now, this is the 4th step, and you go back to the metronome, and basically we're going to try to speed up our example, because now we can play it slow, but we can't necessarily play it at full speed. Now, if you want to know what speed to play it at, now if you have a song, you can figure out exactly how fast the song should go. But for these examples, we're going to go to the Hands Together Domination Ultimate Goal Sheet. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit. But basically, you want to look up your exercise. So this is exercise 2.1. So as you can see, exercise 2.1 is by level 2 of the sheet music. And you see there's 3 tempos. There's this bronze tempo, which is 50 beats per minute. Then there's a silver tempo, which is 80 beats per minute. And then a gold tempo, which is 120 beats per minute. So basically, our goal at first is to get it just to 50 beats per minute. Once that's good, then our next kind of level of goal is to get it to 80, then 120. And a good reason to have 3 goals is you can set that 50 beats per minute, which is a lot easier to hit right at the beginning. And then you have the 120, which is so you can still push towards a further goal. But if you only set 1 goal at 120, it might take you a week to get your example up to there, and it's hard to stay motivated. But if you have 3 separate goals, now you have 3 things to cross off your goal sheet and help you stay motivated. All right, so all you have to do is set your metronome. And actually what you want to do first is you want to try to get hands separate above 50, right? Because if you can only play hands separate at 50 beats per minute, once you add hands together, now your brain has a whole nother layer of things to focus on, getting the hands coordination, right hand and left hand, correct. So it's going to be harder on hands together, so we need to slow it down for hands together. So you really want to get hands separate at about maybe 58 beats per minute. And then once that's accomplished, slow it down to 50 beats per minute and try to get hands together. So it sounds something like this. And then once you can get it to 50 beats per minute, you simply slowly notch up your metronome a little bit more. So now maybe try 58 beats per minute. And you keep increasing your metronome until you hit what I call your max tempo. Now your max tempo is where you just start to make mistakes. Right at a very slow tempo, you can play it perfectly, but as you ramp it up, eventually you're going to hit a tempo that's too difficult and you're going to make some mistakes. Once you hit that tempo, that's your max tempo for the day. You want to try for 4 more repetitions to get that max tempo hit and really focus on it. And if you can't get it, then go back to a slow tempo and make sure you play it 4 more times at a slow tempo. That's because we want to end our practice session drilling in correct accuracy, even if that's at a slow tempo, so our brain, it remembers the correct notes and doesn't remember the incorrect notes. All right, so that's basically how it works. So let's just recap the whole process quick. So you go to your exercise. Step one is you get hands separate rock solid. Remember, rock solid means with a metronome and it's not wavy. It's very rigid and on the beat. Step two is you tap the rhythm out with hands together. By the way, if tapping is too hard, you can still use your metronome and pick a very slow tempo to tap at and then gradually speed up your tapping. So step two is tap. Step three, the added note strategy. Remember, that's when you start with just the first two notes. You play it 4 times. Then the first 3 notes, you play it 4 times. Then the first 4 notes, you play it 4 times, all the way to the end. Step 4 is the metronome ramp up, where you start at a slow tempo, start playing hands together, and gradually ramp up your tempo until you hit your max tempo, and then go back down to a slow tempo for an extra 4 repetitions. Now, this hands together, it's not something that you're going to get overnight, right? Even if you follow this process exactly, you might get your max tempo to, 60 beats per minute on your first day. So you might be able to cross off that bronze tempo of 50 beats per minute, but it might take you multiple days of practice before you get to that gold tempo of 120. So don't get discouraged if you can't, get it on your first day, on your first try. Of course, like anything else, it's going to take time. All right, so now let's go back over to this goal sheet. Now, if you notice the goal sheet, there's actually 80 different exercises, everywhere from exercise 1.1 all the way to exercise 10.8, a total of 80 exercises. Now, these are in the premium Hands Together Domination course, and you don't necessarily, need that course, but if you're the type of person who just says, okay, I just want to take care of the hands together coordination forever. I just want to own this area of my piano skills so I never have trouble with it again. I'll have the link somewhere down below. And then after this video, there's also a video on how to put this strategy into a song, and you'll see me actually start to learn a song using these same strategies that we're using in this example. All right, that's all I got for you. Thanks a lot for watching. Peace out and happy practicing.